So before we do our class presentations tonight, or your presentations, I should say, as promised, we have Matt from Poland here, who is obviously working in supply chain over in Poland. And he agreed at this crazy, ridiculous time, because it's 3 a.m. for him. I've always been too nervous to ask people in Europe to actually join the meeting, but Matt obviously has kindly volunteered, thanks to Magda, really, use the connection to Matt, to actually present. So I'm just going to hand over to him and let him introduce himself. And I think he'll be talking for about 20 minutes, half an hour or so, something like that, about what he's up to in sunny Poland.
Okay, hello everybody. Good morning, America. Once again, as I said, it is 3 a.m. for me. So it looks like it's going to be a really good day, and this is a good start to the good day for me. Hope it will be a good evening for you after that. I was asked, not really telling me what is the exact timing of this event. I was asked to do some presentation, maybe about in the broad topic of global value chains, and I thought, well, maybe I can share something about what we are dealing with here in Europe, because I would be rather looking at the European perspective, although I'm based in Poland, indeed. And I thought I will just show you 2 projects that I'm working on. A few words on myself, a little introduction. For the past almost 20 years now, I've been working in value chains, from more shopper marketing, e-commercially perspective at the beginning, more to the supply chain in the meantime, and actually focusing more and more on the sustainability aspects right now. But basically broad view over value chains. I've been working for R&D, I've been working for consultancies, I've been working for non-profit organizations. Now I've also started working with developing our own products designed to help companies with becoming more sustainable. So very briefly, what's my perspective? So I'm not a typical P&G or Unilever or DHL guy. I work with most of them most of the time, but I tend to have a broader view. Okay, so the first thing that I want to talk to you is emissions. I don't know how it looks with you guys. Presumably better since this year, as there was announcement that US will be rejoining the Paris Convention under new president. Here in Europe, it's getting more and more tense. So more and more companies actually do report their emissions, and they are obliged either by their corporate social responsibility programs or by law to also not only report but also to reduce. The idea is, of course, that if you want to reduce, it's usually the best if you can measure it in the first place. So measurement, emissions, reducing emissions, reducing waste in value chain. This is something that's very close to what I do on a day-to-day basis. That's actually something very close to my heart, really. And so I wanted to show you a perspective and give you perspective on Lean and Green program. Lean and Green program is a collaboration platform developed originally in the Netherlands, and we are also running this initiative here in Poland. Why? Because there is no other alternative other than making our economy more and more circular. And it's not only about the legal environment, it's about the reality. And since all the economy has to be more circular, it also touches the value chain. naturally, there is no net use of resources. You know, we can still turn the same carbon within the globe, broad globe resources, but we need to use energy to do that, and so on and so on. And it's not an easy feat. And of course, logistics plays a role depending on the country, depending on the industry you work for. It's big or bigger, but it cannot be skipped really in this scenario. So here we are focusing on the supply on sustainable logistics. What this graph tells you is, according to the Paris Convention or Paris Agreement from 2015, 195 leading countries and companies in the world actually agreed to achieve carbon neutrality. It will be net neutrality. Let's not go to that. What is the net versus real neutrality right now? But in reality, it means that by 2050, most companies or economies, I should say, actually are expected to return to the emissions level of 1990, which at the same time, taking into account the economical growth and the ever increasing volumes that we ship around, which means that the logistics should become 6 times more efficient in terms of emissions to satisfy the goal. So that sets in perspective. Also, I think last week, the new European Green Deal has also been approved. So the legislation is just getting tighter and tighter. Okay, supply chains, supply networks, as we often use the term. It's not an easy feat depending on what you do, you know it best. Just think about all your business, your organization, your partners, your products, your suppliers, your customers. I think this picture is still very simplified version of reality. And we have emissions everywhere, and it's just a natural part of logistics activity. It's our goal and our ambition to decrease the footprint we have on the environment. And we can do it, and we have ways to do it, not only because there is legislation, but also because it makes business sense. And I'll be talking, you know, whenever I talk about sustainability, it's always a business strategy to me, because sustainability, quite often I do see that, you know, many people think that sustainability is something like, you know, okay, CSR, so it's like a new PR, just focused on sustainability. No, it's not. I mean, it is, but it's also, to me, sustainability is a business strategy about, you know, generating growth in the long term. Because without acting sustainably, it's not really feasible in the long run. So what is the lean and green that we offer here in Poland? But it's working in most European countries, and this year also Canada joined. So here's a little tip for you. It's a 5-star platform for collaboration and emissions reduction. So it's value chain collaboration that also leads to emissions reduction through achieving business objectives, really. It's a network, so we have companies joining in the program. What they do in first place, define realistic goals. So it's not like, okay, I will reduce everything by tomorrow. No, we don't think it's realistic for them. We'll be checking their action plans. They actually have to fulfill the action plan. We verify them, and then they set to achieve it, and then we audit the results. But how it works? Define the goal, but also design the means to achieve them, which means that we're not saying that, okay, you have to stop using fossil fuels, and you can only use electric trucks, or you can only use solar power from now on. You can choose the way, the tools, the means that work for you. because you know your supply chain, you know your reality, you know your customers, you know how your operations work, and it's also good to really consider the cross-functional aspects of your environment, because it's not only you, the logistic guy. Go.
Recording in progress.
Of course, in order to track the progress, we need to measure, and we are measuring the results. There is up to 5 years time to achieve the first star, because you gradually you win awards. First you attempt to get the first star, then once it's audited and awarded to you, then there is the second star, the third star, and so on. The results are verified on the way, as I said, and you get the linear green star. And you know that should normally spark ambition to strive for the second, third, and the next star. The fifth is the ultimate star. So far in Europe, just to let you know, we have around 600 or 700 companies participating in this program. Some of them, most of them, are really looking from a national perspective. Many, well, more and more of the companies are actually looking also from the European perspective, so to say regional perspective. And we have companies at the levels of first, second, and third stars already. But we started talking to companies about the fourth star now, which again is very, very ambitious goals. Not in Poland yet, but I've just had my international meeting yesterday with colleagues from other countries in Europe, and we're getting there. So this is just a brief explanation of the targets. In order to get the first star, you need to reduce at least 20% emissions for at least half of your volumes. And you have up to 5 years to do that, and you can also use what we call the bronze data quality, which includes estimations and using industry standards and so on. The farther up you go the ladder, the goals get more ambitious. So for the second star, we add additional 10% of reduction and additional 15% of the volume. For the third star, it's again additional 5% reduction for the total of 75% of the volume, and so on. The idea behind this is to actually make it attainable. So we want companies to get the stars, we want them to track the progress, and we really want them to progress. So it's a motivation factor as well. Again, a few nitty-gritties: choose the way that suits your company. So you can invest in some new equipment, or you can organize your delivery schedules better. Simply, if you use less fuel, then you have less emissions. So if you organize your logistics in a better way, better utilizing the trucks, you will actually use less fuel per unit shipped. Because at least in the first 3 stars, for sure, you count the emissions per unit shipped. So whichever way you measure, if you reduce it by 20%, it's a reduction of 20%. Okay, even if the measurement itself won't be very perfect, but you need to somehow measure it to be able to track the progress. So again, as every company may be different, so each company can start at their own level. There are companies who actually start with achieving the first star right away, because they can prove with historical data for the past 3-4 years sometimes that they've made such huge progress that they can actually get the first star right away, and that's good. But what is very important to me is it's actually tough to do it. It's tough to achieve those goals by your own. I mean, there is only so much you can clean up your own yard, and in order to maintain the order at your own yard, you need to work with your neighbors, so to say. So this really shows that the way to move forward is to improve collaboration in value chain. And this is actually my background as ECR guy. So yeah, collaboration in value chains is very important. What we also give is the lean and green data and stars is like external objective confirmation of the good actions of the company. It gives huge communication opportunities, both within the value chain part, but also from CSR perspective, and even with communication to consumers, which I have to admit is we're not there yet, because the average awareness of consumers about sustainability aspects of the product is mostly focusing on the ingredients, maybe sourcing, not really how the supply chain works. Consumers usually expect that the product should be available for them at the shelf, and they don't always know how it gets there, but we'll get there. They will change. As I said, lean and green is green, and green is good. So if we are green for the environment, by the same time being green in terms of money, because we're saving money, we're saving emissions, we're making better profits. That's good, because this allows us to grow the business in a more sustainable way, which is great. As I said, again, Lean and Green is the largest business community focused on sustainable logistics in Europe, and now it's also moving beyond Europe, because we started with Canada recently. It is a combination of different perspectives, different aspects in business, because it includes CSR, but broad sustainability, operational excellence, and also constant improving of the value for consumers. So it's a very business perspective combined with all the sustainability, environmental aspects as well. But it's first and foremost, it's a business improvement program. On top of that, we also provide knowledge, but also tools and guidelines for this. So how to measure. There are emissions calculator like a Big Mile we're working with, among others, but we are helping our participants, if they are looking for a emissions calculator, to actually calculate and allocate the emissions. How much emissions have I made driving this truck with this goods from point A to B, from my warehouse to the DC of my lovely customer, and so on. In Poland, for instance, we're not there yet in terms of legislatory requirements on reductions. But in Netherlands, on the other hand, the big companies actually do report how much CO2 equivalent they do emit already. So, the legislation is only going one way, I think. Okay, so that was it about the Lean and Green. I encourage you to go and visit Lean and Green Europe program. It's Lean and Green EU, I guess. If you have any further questions on Lean and Green, please do not hesitate to shoot right now, or maybe contact me later on. Okay, the other topic that I wanted to talk about is drivers shortage. And that's a fascinating topic for me, because I've been dealing with this for maybe past 5 years. And I assume, looking from US perspective, workforce labor shortage in general is something you've been dealing with for the past decades, so to say. From perspective of a relatively fast-growing European country as Poland, it's fascinating, because we have always been considered a net labor exporter. Many of our citizens moving to US, to UK, to Germany. But for the past few years, actually, Poland is considered a net importer of labor, and that's a big mental change for many people in the industry, but that's reality. What I want to talk about right now is drivers shortage, because we've realized that in Poland, alone, we have 200,000 drivers missing, And if we have no drivers, then it disrupts the value chain significantly. I'll be talking about Polish perspective, because the Navigor solution that I will briefly describe to you is, so far as well, it's based in Poland. It is destined to be useful anywhere in Europe and probably in most of the world. But for the simplicity's sake, I will be focusing on Poland. So as I said, 200,000 drivers missing, and to us, seeing people from our neighboring countries doing the driver's job, that's okay, that's the new normal. But we also start to having people from Nepal, from Philippines, from like really remote and, so to say, exotic countries to us. I mean, we would consider them nice places to go for holidays, but it's people coming in on massive scale to do work is something relatively new to our economy. But it just shows how much people we need to work. There are different reasons why we lack the drivers. First of all, they are aging. It's one of the fastest aging trade groups within the industry that I know. The cost of entry to the trade is high because you need to obtain the trucker's license, and it takes time and money. Yet still, because of how stressful the work can be and how the work-life balance can be out of shape, many people who recently joined the trade, they actually leave after 3 or 4 months. So again, it's a big loss of the investment, because the job drop rates in this particular trade are surprisingly high. Even though it's relatively well-paid job, not all people that think it is a good job for them will actually stay in the job long enough to help the overall industry challenge of this shortage. The job offers tough conditions, and this can be improved. The overall planning is far from being perfect, even if your company, or what happens the most is that your operations, they are perfectly organized because you are guys in charge of them, right? But how the drivers, that is external subcontractor, or some other company that's just working for you, not exactly your employee, how they work, I mean, you don't really care, you just need to get the job done. So your operations are perfect, what's outside, I don't really care. That's quite often the attitude and the mindset. So a lot of wasted time. If you actually take a helicopter view and look how the value chain, how the transport part of the supply chain works, there is a lot of waste in terms of time, in terms of emission, in terms of kilometers or miles driven. And we aim to improve that. Safety and security, if the driver, the drivers have strict regulations, how long they can drive, how long they can work, how often they have to take mandatory breaks. And ideally, we would like them to drive. We would like to pay drivers to drive. But at the same time, depending on the country, on the companies, there are different traditions, so to say, different market customs. But more and more drivers also get to do other stuff, like help with unloading, or actually do load and unload the trucks, take care of the returnable packaging, which quite often includes pallets. So it's a common sight that driver arrives to the point of destination, and on top of the unloading the trucks, or before loading the trucks, they also need to take care of, 30 or 40 pallets they have. And if they have it in the back of the truck, it's easier if that's what the location expects from them. But sometimes the pallets are underneath the floor in the pallets basket. And then the driver, and if the location can only unload it from the back of the truck, then the driver actually needs to physically take the 20, 30, 40 pallets by hand and put it on the floor. So it's already, he or she, but mostly he, statistically. He's already tired. And then it's uncertainty about, where do I go to check in? What's the procedure? Will they load me on time or not? Can I help them or not? And things like that. Do they have a toilet? Do they have a shower? So I can use in the meantime while being loaded or waiting. So a lot of stress, a lot of negative emotions quite often. More and more language barriers. Because we have, more and more people not always fluent in our native language. And we are, as a nation, we are getting used to this situation. We are learning how to deal with it. So this may result in drivers being not only physically tired, but also under stress. And imagine that the driver, after completing these operations at the logistics location, then sets to drive on the road, being tired, being exhausted, not always at the full mental capability, and he or she is driving a 40-ton truck. So although they are professional drivers and don't really make as many mistakes as drivers of passenger cars, the results of such possible mistake can be more severe than with a 2-ton regular car or truck. So this was just to give you a background why it's really useful. There is one chart why we've tackled the challenge. This is one chart going more in depth on the lack of drivers and aging part, getting some data for overall Europe, 500,000 truck drivers, and out of probably it's more now. So more than a fifth of the total drivers is actually missing versus what's needed. Out of the 500,000 drivers, 200,000, at least 500,000 drivers, 200,000 truckers are missing in Poland alone. That's the size of the gap. In UK, they say the gap is going at 50 drivers per day rate. In Germany, that's also interesting perspective. By 2027, 40% of truck and 55% of bus drivers will leave due going to retirement, getting retired. So this just shows how impactful this all is, because in Poland, the transport directly or indirectly responds for 3% of GDP. Just to give an example. Okay, so the reality, we know it's a tough job, it's not always perfect, and the not so best practice, we do believe it can be better. There are just few examples. Okay, it's relatively easy with all the sat navs you have, with all the TMS solutions. It should be easy to drive from city A to city B, or DC1 to some other retail outlets, and so on and so on. In theory, it works well, but in reality, it's not always such a nice picture, because those are real pictures from real life, from our friends, from the drivers that we know, and it's not staged. It's all done in goodwill. Just to give you an example, the first big truck on the left, it's the only way to get to some location is through a bike street, sort of bike only street, and you have to know that you have to go this street. So and you have to know it, because if you lose faith that you're going the wrong way, going back or in reversing with a truck in a street like this may be a little hard. On the top right picture, is this the road that is supposed to be taken by the truckers? Can you actually fit underneath the bridge or not? I believe that truckers should not really have to think about it. They should be navigated through such roads that are optimal from perspective. Again, we are touching on the last mile navigation here. I will come back to that later. Maybe the bottom right picture, it's actually in southern Italy. Lidl DC you know, southern Italy is a really nice location for holidays. Many people consider so. So you'd probably love to go there for 2 or 3 days of sunbathing in around noon. But it was also the same time that the lady at the reception office at this warehouse, I don't know, it was a lady. Well, the reception crew actually got their lunch. So you have 20 drivers waiting just to check in, not really to start operations, but to check in first. Well, they have different solutions. They didn't agree on that. So again, it's a huge waste. It's a waste of time. At least 1 hour wasted per every driver here. Then count how many lost, wasted hours of precious time you have in the whole system. So again, we are looking to the whole industry, to the whole system, and looking for optimization opportunities, and there are plenty. So what we believe, what lacks is the lack of knowledge. So we do believe that the shippers, the senders, the customers, the carriers, forwarders, anyone in the transport industry, any stakeholder into the transport industry can improve the working conditions of drivers. And if the conditions are better, if the driver's job is getting easier, more efficient, then it's also business beneficial for any other business that holds some stakes and needs drivers. That's the point here. So we believe that by better planning, providing drivers with the necessary information and helping them doing their job better, the job will be easier for them. The transport it will be more efficient for us. Plus, the whole thing will also increase the level of safety, both from the labor perspective for drivers and maybe warehouse employees, but also road safety for all of us. How we thought to do it, because there are many companies realizing there is this problem of driver shortage, and the most common solution is just increasing wages, which is nice for the drivers, not always for the industry, but it doesn't solve the problem in the long run. It just creates the wages spiral. So we thought about a more coherent, more systemic approach, so to say. We've developed the Navigor IT solution to provide the drivers with information that are useful to them. So as I said, driving from Chicago to New York, I've never done that, but I guess it's relatively easy. I mean, finding the way, but the last mile of the navigation, how do you get into the industrial zone? How do you find the right check-in office or gate? How do you dock? You know, what are you supposed to do during the loading or unloading? Those are the nitty-gritties that really the TomToms, the Garmins, the Google navigations, they don't tell you. Will you have a coffee machine? Will you have a canteen available? Can you actually use a shower while you're waiting for the warehouse operations with your truck? Can you actually stay overnight where you're going, or take the mandatory 4 hours break at the premises of this location? Or if not, is there a parking available in the vicinity of the location? So, you can wait at the external parking and then just take 5 or 15 minutes to get to the location. Because if you don't know that there is a parking available for you as a driver, then you'll probably look for the parking that's 2 hours away from the location. And then that, of course, increases the chance of any mistake and adding up if something goes wrong along the way. So a lot of those drivers, truckers specific information to make their life easier and our business more efficient at the same time. At least that's the idea, but we know it's working already. We've launched the solution last year, and it's growing in our domestic markets. We're focusing on Poland first looking into moving to other European countries in the second half of this year. So how it works, it's an app for the drivers. So the driver can access all the information that I've just talked about in their app. They can also share information with other drivers in the app. So the idea is that it works from the driver's perspective, it works like an address book, but address book of their locations, their usual points of destinations, with the information that is useful to the job of the driver. So things like exact location data, parking opportunities, hours, and notifications. So working hours, is the warehouse or loading operations the same hours as the overall hours of the company or not, things like that. What is the driver expected to do while unloading? Should the driver load the truck, or actually he or she is not allowed to see what's being loaded, or there are different rules in different companies. Way of approach. So the last mile, how to going on the interstate is relatively easy in terms of navigations, in terms of navigation, but actually which exit to take, which gate to take to the industrial park, to the logistics park, things like that. And even if you enter a huge manufacturing plant, there are different gates, different warehouses, sometimes different docks within the big plant. So not to lose time and nerves going around and asking around, you can have all this information available to you as a driver. How to do it? There are two ways to get the information. So we're talking about the hybrid model. Our preferred way is to have the companies actually describe themselves, because that means that they, in their good faith, they should describe everything accordingly to, as is in reality, but also with trusted information coming from the owners of the location. But also at the same time, the drivers can give feedback to locations, can comment on the information given. Drivers can also describe locations for themselves. So if there is no owner of the location, the driver can actually either just notify us, the system, about location, that there is this location. It's nice. It would be nice if it's described, or actually can fulfill every information the driver has about the location and make it available to other drivers. So right now, just to let you know, we are working with major locations. So working primarily on the big retailers. So because of the DCs are places of very high traffic, so major retailers, DCs. Also working with big 3PLs and their locations, because again, this is, if we describe their locations, there will be more and more uses of the whole system, and it's working really and developing really well so far. So some of the benefits for the driver: access to the useful information, something that was maybe available in the past in different ways. You could ask your older colleagues, or if you're driving on the same distribution route every day, then probably you don't need it that much. Okay, but you don't always drive on the very same route every day, and you don't always have your colleagues to ask around. You don't always use radio to do that, or even if you try to ask other drivers, you'll not always be able to communicate with them. Saving time, because knowing what you're expected to do, you can prepare up front. You can plan accordingly, so you can minimize the leads and the driving around the location, because you will also know where to go, how to get there. So there is less time waste and less stress for you. How do I get there? Should I take the main entrance, or there is some deliveries entrance from the other side, things like that. It improves work-life balance, giving the peace of mind, which is very important. Of course, again, overall improves the safety on road, both for the truckers and for all roads users. Mitigating language and communication barriers. As I said before, we are still getting used to having more and more people not fluent in Polish. In Poland alone, even though that many of the Polish drivers actually drive all over Europe, because Poland is, I think, responsible between a quarter and a third of all European transportation Polish companies. So you know, so clearly it shows that using languages help, and in our case, it's not always only English and Spanish that solves 99% of the issues. We've got a bit more languages to be used. It allows to share the information easily. So if there is a detour, if there is, I don't know, a blackout in a location or some crisis, you can actually notify the drivers or other drivers about it. It also helps improves the driver's safety in terms of COVID, because you can clearly give the drivers the clear instructions what the company expects in terms of COVID, you know, because quite often the procedures have changed due to the pandemic. Benefits for logistics location. Again, increase of productivity, I think, is the key here. But satisfied drivers means more drivers available to do the job. Better organization, easier communication. Again, the COVID safety part. And if you are a forwarder or dispatcher, so then you actually you experience the benefits in the first place by saving time, by improving organization, by increasing efficiency of the transport, and again also increasing drivers available to do the job. So that's it. If you are doing some operations in Poland or Europe, I would encourage you to visit Navigor.pl, describe your locations, and help us, help the drivers by telling you all your planners, dispatchers, forwarders, drivers, colleagues, fellow businesses that, you know, the Navigor is the new kid on the market. And it's working good. Yeah. Okay, guys. Thank you. Looking forward to have some contacts with you if you feel like so. And all the best. You have a good evening. I'll have a good day.